Welcome to the first lesson in BAS 120, Introduction to Business Analytics. I'm Mr. Rankin. We're going to go through the first lesson, Chapter 1. Probably going to break it into two parts, but the first part is what is business analytics? So some of the topics we're going to cover is obviously what is business analytics. We're going to define it. Then we're going to talk about the evolution. Then we're going to talk about why it's important. Then we're going to talk about some of its applications. And then we're going to talk about the different scope and area of business analytics. So let's get started. What is business analytics? Well, the formal definition is it's the use of data, information technology, statistical analysis, quantitative methods, and mathematical or computer-based models to gain business managers' insights about their business. So it's how do I use data, translate that data usually through some sort of quantitative method to aid business managers to gain insights about their business so that they can take action and improve the business. All right, now let's talk a little bit, now that we've defined it, let's talk a little bit about the evolution. So we're going to go back a little bit and talk about some of the evolution from the printing press of communications and information. So the printing press, huge, changed things. Monks having to copy, gave information out to the masses. The reason I mention this is the next big thing was the telephone, 400 years apart, because you're going to see lately, things are revolutionary, happening very, very quickly. So that's part of the challenge we have is the rapid change in technology. So I just wanted to present here. Here's the printing press in 1440, and 400 years later, we come up with the next sort of revolutionary thing, the telephone. Okay? Then we move on, and in the 1940s and the 1950s came along the very first computer. Okay? Now this, for the first time, gave us the ability to look at large amounts of data. Even though what we would call back then large and compared to today wouldn't be very comparable, but it was large amounts of data that we could look for. And we gave it various names, like it was new and lots of different names. IBM called it business intelligence. Mathematically, they called it operations research. Some of the business people called it management science. Some of the IS people called it decision support systems. But all of these definitions are all forerunners of what we now call business analytics. So I wouldn't memorize all of these, but you should be familiar with these terms to say, okay, those are forerunner terms of what we now call business analytics. Now, after we had the computer in 1974, notice very few years, less than 20 years later, we came up with a thing called the personal computer. Now, this gave growth to widespread access to available data, even though we had very limited speed on the personal computer. Anybody remember one of these things? They were very slow and cumbersome and couldn't handle much information, but they gave all this data, computing power was now in the hands of individuals. Then in 1992, all things broke through with the internet, World Wide Web, right? So that gave the ability to share, to compare. It gave access to data that didn't exist before. Hopefully most of you remember, research papers in my day, you didn't Google things, right? But it gave to widespread growth. So, and it really exploded sort of this information and data age. So just to give you an example of how it changed things, I do this in my other classes. We talk about, Microsoft was going to revolutionize the encyclopedia industry in the 1990s or so. With Encarta, they had their whole research team. Everybody put this stuff together, invested millions and millions of dollars into Encarta, which was going to be the next great encyclopedia. And then one individual started off on the side on the web in Wikipedia, which eventually put Encarta out of business. So the way data is handled, the way data is manipulated, is not just revolutionized our world, but has totally changed things like the encyclopedia industry. It's different, So let's talk now. Let's talk about where we are now, right? And what the future looks like. That was interesting to look at the past. I think most of us knew the past. But let's take a look at where we are today in business analytics. So this is from a SAS report, and it talks about business analytics. They researched a bunch of industries. It's very much still in the emerging stage. Okay, 97% of the companies over $100 million said they use analytics, business analytics, to some extent, but the vast majority of them use it mainly for reporting and for spreadsheets. It's still in the very elementary stage or in the business intelligence area of business analytics. Intuition still drives most business decisions. Most folks look at the data and say, well, that's nice, but I'm going with my gut, which it is a bit of an art, but most decisions today are driven by intuition. And there's a very what they call cautious adaptation of business analytics, because companies are looking to see, well, I don't want just information. I want information that leads to data that's going to improve my financial or my customer results. Now, there's some roadblocks to adaptation. First of all, the data. Lots of accuracy issues, consistency issues, access issues, and then, as we'll see in a few minutes, just the pure volume of how much data there is. So a lot of firms and companies are struggling with how do we handle all of this data. Then secondly, there's a lack of analytic talent. There's a lack of folks that can take this volumes of data and analyze it. And hopefully that's what this course will help you folks with. And then lastly, there's a role that culture plays in this. A lot of folks have grown up in the era where they're not used to volumes of data, which tends to be the executives in the corporation, tend to be older folks. And there tends to be some reluctance there to utilize some of the new technology. So that's where we stand today in business analytics. And there are some of the roadblocks to overcome. So hopefully we've explained what business analytics is, the evolution, where we are today. Let's talk about why it's important. So first of all, it's important because it aids business performance. Businesses do better if they understand their data. So there's a strong relationship between business analytics and business performance, and we'll show you a couple studies that confirm that. Secondly, understanding the data supports better business decisions. No one's saying you're turning all business decisions over to a model or over to data, but certainly the person that understands the data better, I think intuitively in their studies it'll show they tend to make better decisions. Thirdly, the fast-paced change of information. Not only is information becoming more and more vital for businesses to remain competitive. So, first off, there's been a tsunami of data, right? Data is growing, is fast growing. Annual growth rate, some studies 60%. This is interesting. The CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt's comment, every 2 days, we now create as much information as we did from the dawn of civilization up until the year 2003. So, think of all the information from the dawn of civilization up to the year 2000. We now create that every 2 days. By the way, since we're growing at 60% a year, it won't be long before we're creating all that data in 1 day, hours, whatever. You think about all the time you're on a computer, every touch point is creating data. Which gets to our next point. Not only is data, the amount of data growing, as we see here on this chart, but the type of data is growing. Like it used to be all sort of business transactional data, right? This is this blue area. It used to be all sorts of data that was in the banking transactions, the sales transactions, things that were in companies' databases that they could hold on to. But look what's changed. We've got this whole red area with the World Wide Web. We've got this whole web applications, text messages, images, audio, video, all sorts of stuff. 20 years ago, I couldn't do a YouTube video to explain the course. So not only is data exploding, a tsunami of data, but it's different kinds of data we're not used to analyzing. So just an example, Twitter. According to SAP, the number of tweets per month now exceeds the population on the planet. So every month there are more tweets than there are people on the planet. And oh, by the way, down here, for every tweet, there's 1,000 emails. There's 1,000 more emails in every tweet. So you can do the math. There's enough emails, I don't know, every 4 hours to equal the planet's population. The point is, there's all of this unstructured data that's just exploding. Now, fortunately for us, over the last 20, 30 years, we've had some things that have gone in our favors to be able to handle all this volume of data. First of all, our storage costs have come way, way down. Our access to networks has gone way, way up. Our CPU costs have gone way down, and our bandwidth costs have gone way down. And the other thing that's not on this chart is our software tools, our ability to analyze data has gone way up. So there's this tsunami of data, but we've got some because storage costs and CPU costs and bandwidth costs have all gone down, and our network accessibility has gone way up, and we've got better tools. There's a chance to keep pace with all of this data. Now, helping us keep pace of all of this is a very enormous, large landscape of what's called business analytics. Folks are going to have different definitions. So when someone talks to you about this, and again, this is more not to be memorized, but for you to have some, you have to really understand, are they talking about business intelligence? Are they talking about advanced analytics? Are they talking about visualization? Are they talking about databases? Are they talking about operational infrastructure? Are they talking about media? What are they talking about? And there are all sorts of different players and different vendors and different niche markets all in this. And the reason for that is this is a fast-growing industry that a lot of players are in, and they're in a lot of different niche markets. So when someone says business analytics, you've got to sort of think, well, are they which area are they really talking about? Another reason it's important, analytics is important, is because the executives view it's important. In a recent Business Week Research Services study, 83% of executives agreed that the importance of using information effectively to run their business has never been greater. Now, to me, the key words here are has never been greater. They didn't just say 83% of them said, yeah, it's important. I mean, I would assume 100% of them would say that. But 83% of them said it's never been more important. Using information effectively. So two key words here, effectively and never been greater. Another study, nuclear research, it's very profitable to use business analytics effectively. For every dollar spent, companies get a return of $10.66. I don't know. That's a pretty good investment. All right, so we've been through the importance and the evolution and what. Let's talk about some of the applications. So tell me where some of these folks use this. Here's just a simple overview from Thomas Davenport's article on competing on analytics from the Harvard Business Review, and you'll be reading the complete article later in the course as one of your assignments. But I just want to give you, this gives you a sample of some of the functional areas, a description of where it helps, and some of the exemplary companies. So, for example, in the supply chain, it helps to stimulate and optimize the supply chain. It helps reduce inventory and reduce stockouts. If you go to the store and it's not there, that's lost revenue. Dell, Walmart. We'll show you an example of Walmart here in a minute. Customer service. Big opportunity to identify which customers are my most profitable customers. Not all customers generate the same level of profit. And how do I increase the likelihood that they'll purchase our new product? Or how do I manage my sales force so that they're making the right sales calls with the right products? So I retain that customer loyalty. Again, a lot of good examples of Harrods and other folks. Pricing decisions. How to identify the price that maximize yields or profits. Some folks like Progressive Insurance, Marriott Hotels. We'll do some examples on overbooking. What's the right level of overbooking? Or should I do any overbooking? Particularly in industries where you have a large cancellation potential. Product and services. It can help detect quality issues early in the process, so we minimize them. Some great examples are Honda and Intel. Finally, on the financial end, how do I better understand what drives the financial performance? How do I make sure that I've got the right factors? And what are some non-financial factors? So MCI and Verizon. So we won't look at all of these, but I'll walk you through a couple. Customer relations. We didn't used to have, 20 years ago, we didn't have our car keys with reams and reams of loyalty cards. Now the average person has 14 of these loyalty cards. Well, what are they there for? They're not there because they love to give me a discount. They're there so that they can understand my buying patterns, so they can give me personalized discounts. The grocery store won't send me a discount for a product they know I don't buy. They'll only send me discounts for products they know I do buy. Almost every company now has some sort of loyalty program. As it says here, the average person has 14 of them. Marketing. I think we've all seen the Netflix of the world, the Amazons of the world, that when you go to their site, people that like this also like this. A lot of cross-marketing, cross-selling, right? How do I suggest to you something that if you like this, you would also like this? Hulu, Amazon, Netflix. Almost all marketers are getting into this area of analytics where I understand if you like this, you like something else. We talked about the supply chain. Here's Walmart and what Walmart did to reduce out of stock, streamline the supply chain. Just to give you a view of the importance of this, the value of Walmart's inventory, it changes daily, but at the end of last year was $43 billion. $43 billion of inventory. Now, a 1% improvement to that, I hope I've done the math right, a 1% improvement is 430 million. So the wonderful thing about analytics is you don't need to make phenomenal adjustments to save a lot of money. Now, you think about the daunting task Walmart has of how do I deliver the right products at the right stores at minimized cost. Remember, I'm all over the place. 90% of the population in America lives within 15 minutes of a Walmart. And oh, by the way, the U.S. is only 60% of Walmart's global sales, so they're all over the world too. But think about that. 90% of the U.S. population lives within 15 minutes of a Walmart. And I've got the challenge of how do I deploy these products based on demand levels. And if I can improve it by 1%, I save $430 million. That's worth taking a look at. Pricing. We talked about Marriott Hotels. Think of some of the challenges they've got. 3,700 properties in 70 different countries all over the world. 18 different brands from, Fairfield Inns to Marriott Courtyards to whatever. Now, how do you do the pricing? How do you do some dynamic pricing when you've got about a 65% occupancy rate? You drive that up 1 or 2%, figure out some pricing strategies, which they do a lot of analytical work on. They're one of the exemplaries. Small changes in that could drive lots of difference in profits. Harrods Casino, the entertainment industry out in Las Vegas, done a lot of work on what's called the pain threshold. So I don't know if there are casino folks out there, but it used to be you could go to a casino and you could walk into a slot machine and you could swipe your credit card and play. Now you don't do that. You have to go over and get a loyalty card. You have to get a card from them. The reason is they want to track every place you go because they want to understand what's called the pain threshold. The pain threshold is where I get to a point where I've lost enough that I'm deciding to quit. Now, notice in real time, Harrods in the back office, they're tracking everything. Okay? If they see I'm coming close to my pain threshold, Harrods staff member might approach, offer a free steak dinner, offer a $15 credit. Huge incentive for them to have me stay there and play. Now notice the real-time nature of all this information. Not only do we have the tsunami of data, but we need this data in real time. Doesn't do me any good to find out tomorrow what my pain threshold is. I need to know that that day and have somebody down on the floor advising me the same thing. Same thing with our next example on credit card fraud. Doesn't do me any good to figure out it was a fraudulent credit card tomorrow. I've got seconds to analyze the data and figure out whether that credit card should be passed. As soon as I swipe the credit card, I should know if this is a transaction that's not in the pattern of a typical purchaser, doesn't live in that town, or doesn't normally shop for this type of product. These things should be caught right up front. Again, the number's enormous. Estimated financial fraud, $190 billion. So if we can improve that 1%, we've saved almost $2 billion for somebody. So, it's important because it can drive all sorts of financial and business improvement benefits. So let's talk about our last area. Let's talk about the scope of business analytics. So here's, again, Tom Davenport wrote a book on competing on analytics, which was one of the 3 key areas of analytics. First of all, and this part of the graph is the degree of complexity, and this part of the graph is how big a competitive advantage it is. So as we get more complex, we move up and become a bigger and bigger competitive advantage. So down here is what's descriptive analytics, or what some folks call business intelligence. So this is where we're doing standard reporting. We're telling people what happened. Here's what happened. Here's what revenues were last month. We may get into some ad hoc reporting. We may do some drill down to say, oh, here's where the problem is. But we're talking all about history, and we're describing what happened. We're explaining to management, here's what happened last month with your results. It's interesting information. There's value to it, but it's not nearly as valuable as the next stage of analytics. These two, predictive and prescriptive, are sometimes referred to as advanced analytics. Now we're getting out of the stage of just describing what happened, describing history. Now we're using history to do simulations, forecasts, to predict what's going to happen. Hey, the pattern predicts that this is what's going to happen. The pattern says you should call on these 5 customers, not these other 5 customers. Becomes much more powerful. Prescriptive analytics is where we actually have the computer do the optimization, right? We actually have it say, how can we achieve our best outcome? For example, if you're go back to Walmart with the supply chain, what are the most efficient routes? Which routes minimize my cost and maximize my costs at certain constraints, like that I can't have any stock outs or etc. So descriptive describe, predictive predicts, prescriptive actually has the computer give us an answer via some optimization. Just a quick summary. Descriptive analytics, they describe the situation. Example, the class average on the test was an 81. Predictive analytics, we use to forecast, right? Which salespeople should I call on? Where should I go? Prescriptive analytics is what optimization techniques. What route? What frequency of banks, ATMs should I visit to maximize my collection efforts? Okay, let's go through the learning objectives for this lesson and make sure we've covered them. We're able to define what business analytics. We talked about the evolution. We talked about and understood the importance. We talked about some of the different applications, and we talked about the scope. In the next section, we'll talk about data for business analytics. Thanks. Any questions? Let me know.